I'm a big believer with whatever you're doing. If you're flipping, if you're wholesaling, if you're focusing on buy and hold, if you're working as a realtor, if you're doing a different career and then using the income from that career to fund investing in real estate and whatever it is, I'm a huge believer that you need to algorithmize your life. And what this means is that you sit down, you figure out your goals, you figure out your plans, your vision in every aspect of your life, your time, money, your risk tolerance, your health, your career, your education, hobbies, faith, all of those things. And you make rules that must be followed. And, that first big rule I talked about with my wife was making sure that we knew we were going to only live off of the cash flow of our real estate. And once we knew that was unbreakable, we were both on board. That's how we managed our finances. And that's how we were both very motivated to spend every dime that we could in buy and hold investments that created strong cash flow. Excuse me. And so I would challenge you to take a step back, because a lot of times we just go and do, but really say, what are my goals? Where do I want to end up? Where do I want to be? And what rules, if put in place, would get me there? I don't know how many of you guys use ChatGPT, but I've become obsessed with using it to make decisions, plan my life. And I think the thing I love the most about people using it is you kind of realize that, hey, here are actionable steps. And if you put them into motion, you should get this desired outcome. And I think with real estate, with sales, with any of this, a lot of times it's hard to believe you're going to get the desired outcome because you're facing opposition, you're facing failure, you're facing struggle. And that makes you question if the outcome is going to come, because it's easy to lean into the negative emotions of the negative things that happen. And I can promise you, if you algorithmize your life, if you set these rules in place, and if you hold to those rules, even when things don't go your way, even when you fail, even when you struggle, then you're going to be able to get to where you want to be. The rest of the slides I'm going to pass, because I wanted to talk to you guys about seller financing in this training a little bit more. And so one of the big things that I wanted to talk about is, for me, I got into a place where I hit a really sweet window of great interest rates. So I have a good chunk of real estate just from bank loans that's locked in somewhere between 2.5% and 4% interest rates, because of the timing and when I purchased real estate, and then also when I refinanced all of my real estate when those rates were low. And that interest rate for your cash flow ends up being huge. Now, I know, talking to the other people that are in my community with my course, where I teach people how to invest in real estate and how to go about all of those things, I see a lot of people that the last year and even right now are struggling a little bit more to find deals that cash flow. And the reason that it's become so difficult to find deals that cash flow is because of the interest rates. There are deals now that potentially could have been a buy, 2-3 years ago, that right now it's really hard to justify purchasing them, because they're barely cash flowing, if they're cash flowing at all. But the market hasn't necessarily dropped. So you've got a lot of these rental properties where it's hard to make sense from a cash flow perspective. And so what I've really leaned into the last year is, the majority of my deals, I haven't done regular financing. I've found multiple deals where it's seller financing. So just in the last year, I have had, probably a little over 30 units worth in multiple different purchases that are at a 3% interest rate or lower. And the reason for this is because there are lots of people that are wanting to sell, and they were planning on selling in this window. And now they've been hit with this weird interest rate period where they're a little bit worried they're not going to be able to get what they wanted to get for their rental properties. A lot of times the older people that are trying to unload their properties are also very intimidated to deal with a realtor. They're worried about getting taken advantage of. They're worried about the expense that goes into hiring and using a realtor. And all of these are big pain points. The other big pain point is taxes. And this is something where, if you really understand it and you can help walk a seller through it, or even connect them with an accountant to be able to answer their questions and put them at ease that, hey, you could sell the property outright, but you're going to deal with these fees with a realtor. You're going to deal with the hassle of multiple people wanting to walk through, disturb the tenants, lots of offers that fall through, lots of time sitting where the whole world knows your property's for sale. Or you work with me where there are no fees. There's none of this other stuff. It's a very quick, easy process. And by doing seller financing, you can break up your tax load so that we can give you a larger down payment now that you can work with taxes. And then you can get payments over the next 5, 10, 15 years, and then another large sum at the end. And this can be a win every single way for you, because now you're deferring taxes, which, you know, at these prices that I'm purchasing these properties can be 20, 30, even 40% that they cannot have to pay if they structure these deals properly. Now, once you've hit them with all of these pain points, with all these different things that go into the equation, I think a lot of people say a 3% interest rate, why would anyone take that in this market? But these people are thinking, hey, if it's 30, 40% in taxes and, you know, I'm getting 3% when the market, I mean, maybe, but there would be some kind of risk involved to get higher than that. But this is a property where I'm getting 25 or 30% down, or in some situations, 15 or 10% down. But if they don't pay, I just get to take over this property that I already know is worth this, and I get to keep their money. And even hitting on that pain point for a lot of these sellers really helps them understand, man, this is a win for me, but it also gives you the ability to pay them more, because you can lock in substantially lower interest rates and make deals cash flow a lot better. And when I say more, a lot of times that's not even the case. A lot of times I'm going to show them comparables and I'm going to say, hey, this is a comparable that just sold, but you, if you list it, are going to be paying 6% to a realtor. And so let's take 6% off of that. And now let's look at the prices. And that's another pain point that you can hit on, because then you can still buy a property under market with seller financing by hitting these pain points. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is probably one of the tools that has been the most useful for me when it comes to seller financing. And this is the way that I structure offers. Now, anytime I get an opportunity, I love using tools to get off-market deals, whether that's connections with realtors, wholesalers, you know, drive-in for properties, sending out mailers, doing ads, whatever you're going to do to try and connect with off-market deals, because then you're not competing, you're not dealing with the realtor fees. And so I love being able to connect with someone in that situation. But I've even seen this strategy work with my realtor if I coach them through all of the pain points that I just talked with you about, to make sure those make it to the seller. And so a lot of times, if you do have a third party, even if you're dealing with a wholesaler, or you're dealing with a family member, or you're dealing whatever it is, sometimes you've got to learn how to pitch them on the proper way to pitch the deal, on all the pain points that need to be hit. And so the most recent deal, seller financing, that I got, it was by putting in an offer the way that I'm going to talk about, but through my realtor to their realtor to the seller. And so the way that I like structuring it is, one, hitting on all of these points and coaching them on it to kind of preface it. But then when I put in an offer, I love giving a 3 or 4 or even 5-part offer. So for example, I had a property and I released a video on YouTube if you guys want to go and see the whole breakdown of that property. But it is a 16-unit apartment complex that I ended up getting a 3% interest rate on a 30-year AM. And the market on these fourplexes, so it's 4 fourplexes all in one purchase, all of the comparables were between $650,000 and $700,000. And these are newer units. I was able to get it under contract at $600,000 even for each unit, with seller financing at 3% on a 30-year AM with a 5-year balloon payment. And so for that deal, my cash flow is astronomical. My cash on cash return is, I mean, I think when I ran the math, it was pushing 16 or 17% on the money that I had invested in the deal. And a big reason he was open to this is, originally he wasn't wanting to negotiate on price. And we talked about all those pain points, but then I put together an offer that said, if I pay cash or get a loan somewhere else, my price is going to be $500,000 because that's where it cash flows for what I would buy. If you can do it at a 5% interest rate, and I'm making up these numbers, I did the math to see where I was getting my desired cash on cash return. But if we do 5%, instead of paying 500,000, if you're willing to lock in 5% on a 3%, on a, 5% interest rate on a 30-year loan, then I'm willing to pay 550. However, if you are willing to do 3%, at 3%, I could pay $600,000 per fourplex if you're willing to do seller financing. And so now, instead of anchoring to comparables when we've already maybe beat them up there a little bit, or anchoring to anything else, I'm able to anchor extremely low and show him this property doesn't cash flow at what you're asking because interest rates for me on this particular property are going to be 7-8%. And so showing them, hey, I can pay more. It's a win for me. It's a win for you. Here are the tax benefits. Here is the way that it would be structured. There are going to be no closing fees. And to top it all off, when we're doing seller financing, you can promise a 7-day close, which is incredible, especially if you're willing to get in there and do your inspection and do all of that. You can say, look, it's going to take 45 days if we're going the loan route, maybe longer, depending on who I use for financing. But if we can do seller financing, this deal can be done in 7 days. You can have your 25% down. You can have your 3% interest rate. You're going to avoid taxes. It's all going to work out great. And so I've found a ton of success with structuring deals that way. And sometimes they want it in the offer. Sometimes it'll just be a text of, hey, this is the offer we were going to put in. Do you already have the offer selected you want? And that's what happened on the one that I started talking about a minute ago with our 8plex that we just got in a 3% interest rate. He looked at all of the options we gave him and he told his realtor, hey, he's interested in the 3% option. However, he wants to counter on only a 5-year because my offer was at a 10-year balloon payment on a 30-year AM. He said he wants to be cashed out in 5 years. And we accepted it. We said, great. So on that deal, we went through realtors. We put those offers together in a text. He texted back on his favorite. But I love it because then it takes the negotiation and the back and forth and they're taking advantage of me or I want to take advantage of them. It kind of separates that and it just gives them options with seller financing options to where then they're just picking which one they like best rather than how do I go about negotiating back, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's really helped them to lower their guard even when working through realtors. One thing, a lot of people say, Chandler, how do you determine a buy? So I'm going to jump ahead. It's so crucial to really dial in what you're looking for. And I'm just going to skim this really quickly. But with the analysis, I realized that I wanted to focus on cash flow. So I'm always looking at my cash on cash return, which really is just the return on the amount of money you have locked up in the property, taking into consideration your loan payments. So this is money that I'm bringing home return just in cash flow, even after my loan on my initial investment. And so I started out really wanting to find properties with a 15% cash on cash return or higher. And that's what I held to. I have a 20-minute video that shows you exactly how to analyze the rental properties. And I made this app free. I've spent, probably $15,000 developing it to make it as simple as possible where you can be there with the seller, you can plug in the numbers, and you can analyze the rental property right there with them. And this is a phenomenal tool for negotiating in person or even over text to send them pictures of what the return is actually going to be on your property. And so that's on Android and iOS. You can just download it. It's the CDS rental calculator. And again, I made that free. I just wanted to be a phenomenal tool for people. And we've got over 160,000 people that are using that on a regular basis. And it's an awesome way for you to analyze those deals. So that's another little free thing that you guys might want to jump on.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.